Okay, thank God. We only have 4 this time.
It's a good thing, isn't it?
That's very, very nice. And easy. Actually, no it isn't. Because our first movie is Interstellar. Let me start off by saying this immediately. I've been dreading this review as this release date got closer and closer because I consider myself a huge Nolan fan.
Yeah,
I really do. I love everything he's done, and I think he's just fantastic and a visionary, and is just making these big, massive movies, and I think he's a genius in a way. But reviewing a Nolan movie on the internet is kind of a lose-lose situation for everyone involved.
Pretty much.
Because there are 3 ways this is going to go down. I'm either going to love this and praise it to the heavens, and his haters will come after me. I'm going to absolutely hate this movie, and his fans will crucify me. Or I'll think it's good but not great, and his fans will still crucify me.
Either way, you're getting crucified by somebody.
Yes.
In a not a literal sense, of course. Well, maybe.
So, you want to get literal. Here's the problem. It's not enough to use a vulgar example. To describe not all of them, obviously, but to describe a big number of Nolan's fans, you kind of have to suck the dick of the movie. Like, if you suck the dick of the movie, they will still be mad because you didn't, like, go for that and the balls. That's what they want.
They want the whole experience.
Yes. If you just suck the dick, that's not good enough. So, I will do my best to please everyone, which is a great way to go into the internet.
Oh, wow. I wish you the very best, sir.
No, somebody will come away from this review angry. So, I shall begin now. I think I made everything clear now. I've addressed that as much as I can.
Yeah, you've covered everything
in
pretty
every
well.
possible way, with every possible example. Okay. Well, Interstellar is the story of a farmer who is Matthew McConaughey. And he is a widower, actually. But he has 2 kids, and he lives with his father-in-law, who is John Lithgow. And they live on this farm, but the trouble is we're kind of in the future. There's not really a specific year that is said.
No.
But, they live in it kind of looks like Looper.
Yeah, just a bit.
They kind of somewhat live in the Looper future, I guess. But it might be farther into the future, I'm not quite sure. But, now they're pretty much running out of everything, and Earth is starting to become inhabitable. So despite being a farmer, he also has a thing for science. Like, one of the first scenes of the movie is them, driving around, following a drone around, and he picks it up and carries it with him, and all of that. Likes to do science things to it. And his daughter, Murph, who's named after Murphy's Law, obviously, also has a thing, even more so than him, really. She seems more driven to it.
Yeah.
The other kid, Tom, is just kind of his own thing. He's more along the lines of a farmer. We hear David Yellow say that. Well, eventually, this is another one of those makes a long setup. Murph is being visited by what she calls a ghost, who seems to be trying to signal to her something. She's not sure what. But eventually they find a sign that it has left that gives them coordinates. So McConaughey says, hey, let's go to these coordinates. And when they go there, he is... captured's a strong word.
Yeah.
He's basically captured by NASA. But they don't mean him any harm or anything. Like, when he, says, are you gonna kill me? They just kind of laugh at him. But no, they're just NASA, and they're looking for a pilot. For a shuttle that is going to go off and look for another inhabitable planet for when Earth dies. Because as the movie's advertisements and the movie itself continue to drive in, we were born here, but we're not meant to die here. So, And that's what the rest of the movie is, basically, with a lot of other stuff thrown in.
Yeah.
So, okay. I'll go ahead and get this out of the way, because that's what everybody's going to say. Even the people who hate the movie are going to say. Obviously, its visuals are quite literally out of this world.
Insane.
You get your 2001 comparisons, you get your Gravity comparisons, obviously.
Yep.
Before the movie even came out, you saw this coming.
Of course.
But the thing about it is, there's a lot. One compliment I'll go into now is a big complaint people who are not very big fans of Nolan have is that his movies lack like emotion and heart and stuff like that.
Mm.
This has a lot of that.
Oh yeah.
Like Inception just kind of had the love story with Maul and stuff like that, but a lot of this is based on the emotional aspects of it. And mainly the relationship between McConaughey and Murphy, who is played by 3 different people.
Yeah.
Because as you know, it's really hard to tell exactly what is spoilery and what isn't in a 3-hour movie with a lot of development. Obviously, since it's a space mission, it spans over a long period of time.
Yeah.
So there's that. Now, as far as the heart is concerned, there are a couple of things. For starters, when Murphy is little, and she was one of the girls in The Conjuring.
She's Mackenzie Foy.
Yes. Okay, so once he signs on to this mission, she has decided that she doesn't want him to leave because she knows it's going to be for a long ass time. And they have this really emotional scene where he's getting ready to leave, like he's on his way out the door, and she won't talk to him because she's like being defiant because he's leaving. So he just kind of grabs her, but she won't. She's just screaming at him, you know, that she doesn't want him to leave, and why is he doing this? Why is he leaving them? And he's saying, "Don't make me leave like this." That's a really powerful scene.
Yeah.
And then, of course, when she finally decides to stop being stubborn and come after him, all he is there's just dust in his wake from where he's already gone.
A lot of dust in this movie.
Yes, because dust storms are one of the many things making Earth inhabitable at this moment.
Yep.
So there's a lot of those. Now, another thing is, and we have other big scenes later when Murphy's now played by Jessica Chastain when she gets older. Which, of course, with, you know, wormholes and all that, she ages and he doesn't.
Yes.
They don't. There's a whole crew of them. It's McConaughey, and it's Anne Hathaway, and it's Wes Bentley, and it's that other dude.
That other dude.
I'm sure he'll show up in other movies now that he's been in this. And yeah, there is one of the things that got this movie attention immediately was its gigantic cast list. This cast list is massive, and it seemed like somebody was being added to it every day.
I remember that actually, yeah.
So who all do we have? I mentioned David Oyelowo has one scene. There's Topher Grace. The adult version of Tom is Casey Affleck. Okay, yeah, it's right here in front of me now. I'll cheat, fine. Yes, Bill Irwin. I'm a little somewhat bit disappointed because I thought Bill Irwin was one of those really interesting casting choices of, like, you have all these names that everybody knows, and then you have, like, that character actor that's been around for a while that, if you, to really single him out, you'll probably know him as Cindy Lou Who's dad in The Grinch.
Nice.
But he's in a lot of he was in Rachel Getting Married. I think he was in Higher Ground, a lot of indie movies. I was excited that he had a part in this, but it's just his voice. He is Tars, the sarcastic robot. He's basically doing Spacey and Moon.
Yeah, that's exactly what he's doing.
And he is their robot companion on this journey. Who's very creatively designed, by the way he can walk and shit. That was very interesting.
That was awesome.
Now, I'll go ahead and say this because apparently there was a change because this cameo is so well known now. One of the people added to the cast list early, who was supposed to go uncredited, was Matt Damon.
Yeah.
He's credited now. I think because too many people found out. Yeah, I suppose I won't say too much about exactly what his part is, but Matt Damon is in there.
He's important in some ways.
Now, it is worth noting that there are a lot of people complaining about the writing, which, I was, as a Nolan fan, I was kind of quick to dismiss, because, yeah, there are those people who are, like, really rabid fans who will tear you down for saying anything negative. But at the same time, because Nolan's movies are held in such high regard, there is also those people who are just absolutely 100% prepared to nitpick the shit out of it.
Yeah, you can't please everyone.
Just because. I didn't see too much of a problem with the writing.
Nope.
I know people don't like the speeches, like the Hathaway speech in particular, about how, love transcends space and time and all that. But I thought it didn't bother me. No. Because I was kind of looking forward a little bit because I already had that in subconscious. That's why I normally try to not read reviews before I do my own, because I have that shit in my subconscious after I read it.
Of course.
I was waiting for, the really bad, corny lines or something. But not, The Dark Knight has quite a few, have a nice trip, see you next fall in The Dark Knight and stuff like that. But,
yeah.
All of Nicky Katt's lines in The Dark Knight. But, I didn't really, granted I've only seen it once. Nolan's movies for me always have to go at least a couple or a few times. Which I will get on, and I probably could totally review this much better after that. See all of my putrid reviews of Gravity that are on this channel, which I have now seen Gravity about 3 or 4 more times since that review, and I could probably do it much better now. The same goes for this, I imagine, if you want to give it another Gravity comparison. Just throw on there already. Yeah, I get that there's problems, I'm sure, if you really dissect it. But as far as reviewing this after a first go-around, I even told you a while back I actually wanted to try to see this twice before reviewing it, but that was before I realized that it was 3 hours long, and that was probably going to be impossible.
Yeah, unfortunately.
To be fair, it's like an hour. It's like 2:55 or something. It's not quite 3 hours.
I put a lot of trailers on it, though.
Yeah. So, you're going to be in there for over 3 hours because of trailers, but regardless. I do realize immediately a problem here that I also have with Inception. Which, granted, I absolutely loved Inception when I first saw it. That midnight show the day before it came out.
Yes.
I felt like I had seen nothing more amazing. And now Inception is my number 3 of that year after The Social Network and The Town. But still, I hold it in very high regard. The trouble that I had with Inception that I'm going to probably absolutely have with Interstellar. If you've been watching these videos long enough, you know that rewatchability is very important to me. Some people think it's overrated, but I really, really feel like a great movie has to be able to sustain watching it over and over and over again, and not, if not getting better, staying at the same greatness you had it at before. And it's the same problem with Inception, is the reason that rewatchability is going to be a little difficult is, because Nolan's movies are so high concept, there has to be a lot of exposition. Because, and that kind of, that was a little disappointing too, because, usually it's kind of like right away. Like in Inception, like, DiCaprio's spouting out exposition from beginning to end.
Yeah.
And Joseph Gordon-Levitt a lot too. But there's like a good, I'm not sure how long, I have no idea exactly what was at what point in time in the runtime in this movie, but the whole opening before he's with the NASA people and they're going through the mission, that whole thing is like its own thing where we don't, have to worry about exposition, and it's the characters being the characters and the emotions doing their thing, and everything just kind of gradually getting us to where we need to go.
Yeah.
It's when I hate to bring this on him because I'm such a huge fan of the man, but anytime Michael Caine showed up in this movie, I was like, oh great, here comes the exposition train.
Yeah.
But like I said, it is hard to fault the movie for that, even though it really, really taints the rewatchability, because with Nolan's movies, if you don't like, this is what I hated so much about the criticisms toward Inception, was everybody's complaint was, oh my god, they won't stop with the exposition. Oh, they're spelling everything out. But if the exposition in Inception wasn't in there, everybody would be complaining that it didn't make sense.
Yep.
So it really just depends. Yeah, I know there's a certain way to do exposition that you can do to where it's explanatory while also leaving things open and it doesn't completely bore you to death, but that's an area Nolan does still need to work on a little bit, that he showed with here in Inception mainly. But it's not enough to bring me down from the movie or anything. Like I said, it's really hard to go into more of this without, because I have no idea what counts as a spoiler here.
Yeah.
But, I guess this is probably a good stopping point. I've said that I think very highly of the movie. But it does have those little faults in there that Nolan can work on, which I think in time he will be able to work out. See, I still think his masterpiece is Insomnia, and he didn't write that movie, so... I read somewhere that he did the final draft and he's not credited for it, but I don't know if that's true or not. I haven't seen anything to prove that, so... We'll see what happens. Speaking of Insomnia, though, there was, people have been wondering, since his movies seem to be getting grander and grander as they go.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of weird to me how massive it was in 2010. But after you watch Interstellar, Inception seems so low-key.
Yeah.
It seems so in a small place. People are wondering what his next project is going to be. I think I've heard a lot of people say this, and I agree. I think it'd be a bad idea to try to go bigger than Interstellar. It'd be very interesting to see him do something like this, and then go back to something small like Memento or Insomnia.
Yeah, I think it's going to be something small.
And people are still waiting for him to get a Bond movie, which I'm sure will happen before too long.
I want him to have a Star Wars movie after that.
Well, let's give J.J. Abrams a chance, and then we'll figure that out.
I have no issues with Abrams at all.
Or Ryan Johnson.
I don't have a problem with Ryan Johnson either.
So yeah. I do think that I would be singing much more praises to this had I seen him more than once, but I do plan on seeing this probably a few more times at least, so...
That makes two of us.
So yeah. Alright. Our next movie is Big Hero 6. This is definitely going to be an interesting box office battle this weekend.
No lie.
Okay. So the whole avoiding trailers thing is continuing to be useful because I really had no idea exactly what this was going in. Except that it was an animated superhero movie. That's the only way I knew how to describe it. Early reviews were comparing it to Pixar. Pixar, like Toy Story 3 and back, not what they have become today. So, because I heard a lot of, like, when Wreck-It Ralph came out, which is amazing.
Yeah, I love Wreck-It Ralph.
A lot of people said, wow, why isn't that the Pixar movie this year? That's kind of what people were saying this was, in quality. Well, okay. We start off, and we're in this... It looks futuristic. I don't know if it's supposed to be or not.
I think so. It has to be. It's San Francisco.
Yeah, second movie right in a row where it's like, I'm pretty sure this is futuristic, but I don't know what year it is. The opening shot reminded me of the opening shot of Mystery Men. Yeah, there's a lot of derivative things in here. You'll notice a trend of me saying this scene was a lot like this other movie. Well, the plot is we have this genius kid And the first scene we see is from Real Steel.
Yeah.
Where you have the people controlling the robots that fight. They're much smaller though.
A lot smaller.
So,
like battle bots.
Yes, that's what I was trying to think of.
Yep.
And of course the kid hustles this. He seems like he's a crime boss of sorts.
Yeah.
And his brother-like relative, I can't remember exactly how they were related, but, picks him up on a scooter and saves him, and then we realize, oh, these guys are like brothers. They're inseparable. Let's hope no tragedy brings them apart. So, we're introduced to, something that he's been working on. Because obviously that's what these people do. They build robots. He has built a giant robot called, Baymax, who has, like, you know, a titanium skeleton inside, but on the outside he's big and fluffy, like a marshmallow or the Michelin Man.
Michelin Man. Yes.
Or Mr. Stay Puft, only nicer.
Yeah, a lot nicer than Mr. Stay Puft.
And he's a nurse.
Yeah.
Like, you say ow, and that activates him, and he comes to your rescue. And he's programmed to go through all of the medical conditions, and he can just scan you and see, you know. He's the total opposite of the Terminator. He scans you and then tries to fix you.
That's true.
Well, naturally, tragedy strikes. And his brother figure thing is killed in a fire.
I'm pretty sure it's his brother.
Trying to save somebody, I don't think so.
I think it is,
because he was talking to him and he said, my parents died. Yeah, he's an orphan too, go figure.
Well, maybe he's adopted. That might be the issue then.
I don't know. Well, they live... it's his aunt.
That's their aunt, yeah.
And she wasn't Laurie Metcalf, but I'm pretty sure... Was that Maya Rudolph?
It is Maya Rudolph.
It's Maya Rudolph doing Laurie Metcalf as Andy's mom, basically.
Yeah, completely.
A much more animated... No, well... a much more animated in personality.
Correct.
Andy's mom. So... after he has died, our main character, whose name happens to be Hero, is going through a depression. They do the thing where the ant lays out food and then he doesn't eat it. All that. But then one day he hurts himself and realizes that Baymax is still here. So they become friends. And then he decides... He goes and okay, there's this whole other thing where the robot he initially built, Baymax says, we can follow your robot because it needs to go somewhere, obviously.
Yeah.
So they follow it and we meet a supervillain who is a dude, and he actually has kind of a creepy appearance, and he has a couple of creepy entrances.
He looks like the masked magician mixed with the great Sasuke.
And we realize that he is apparently the one that is responsible for the death of his brother figure. So, naturally, he basically turns Baymax into Neo. He downloads Kung Fu into him.
Wow.
So, now, there is a scene where Baymax says, I know karate. But when he said, I know, I really thought they were going to take that all the way.
Same here, actually.
No, John Wick was a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
But no, there are, not many, but there are some original things here. It's also worth noting that towards the end, obviously, we have our big, let's have all our heroes together. And he puts armor on him and turns Baymax into Iron Man.
Yeah.
He even does the thing where he does this when he floats with his booster things on his ankles. I know, right? It's fucking the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man in the Iron Man suit. That's who Baymax is. So there's that. And I gotta say, if you want to continue that, there are scenes where, as much as I really don't like these movies, even you can probably back this up, because I know you hate those movies with me. Hate's a strong word, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
There are scenes where Hero gets on Baymax's back and they fly around. And God Almighty, was I getting Hiccup and Toothless vibes from these scenes.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's a lot of familiar territory in this movie. It's actually almost completely made up of familiar territory. But it's still enjoyable enough. They still throw some of their own original things in there. The character of Baymax as a whole is, despite his appearance and what he can do, and how he gets to be that way, he's actually a somewhat original character.
Yeah, definitely.
I like that he can inflate and deflate when he has to get through small spaces.
That's funny.
He runs on a battery, and when his battery gets low, he's basically drunk. That's exactly how they treat it, too.
Yeah.
When he puts him on his little charger, it's like, putting a drunk to sleep. The only thing he didn't say was lay on your side. We also have some really cliche character types in this. The smart kid / orphan is already here. But then we have the stoner character voiced by T.J. Miller.
Why not?
who basically does a PG version of quoting Jesse Pinkman at some point. Because he's a stoner who speaks in yeah, and they're talking about science. You can probably guess that line already.
Wow.
There's the emo girl. There's the Ditz, who I'm pretty sure is an adult version of Dee Dee from Dexter's Laboratory. This is what she grew up to be, apparently. The only character that I kind of liked that's part of the Big Hero 6 is you get it.
Mm-hmm.
Is a character named Wasabi, who's voiced by Damon Wayans Jr.
Yeah.
He's also kind of a familiar type. He's the one where he looks really tough, but he's not. But I did like that character. Even though he does some predictably funny things. Like they're in a car chase and he stops for the red light. When he's about to get crushed by something, he screams like a girl. It's all familiar stuff, but it was really funny in context. And Damon Wayans Jr. is really funny, so, in general. So
yeah.
I'm sure that helped. There are a lot of story turns I didn't care for. Halfway into the movie, I turned to you and told you what the twist was, when I hadn't even seen so much as a trailer for this.
I figured that, but I wanted to go a different direction.
It's one of those movies where pretty much every other line, you can pretty much predict what the other line is. Every now and then there's those moments in normal movies, but here it's like, every other line, you could say the line in your head before it happened. There's a big emotional ending that you can see coming from a mile away, but once again, it's probably pretty pointless because chances are this is going to be a multiple sequel movie. I don't dislike it as much as it sounds like. It is a very, very enjoyable movie, and the action scenes are really well put together. Predictable as it is, the humor is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
It's totally harmless. Yeah. It's one of those movies where, it's one of those rare, to give it credit, it is one of those rare movies nowadays to where it's a movie where both kids and adults can get enjoyment out of it without the kid at some point getting the shit scared out of him. So,
I know what you're talking about there.
If you're a family, that's always nice.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though everybody loves looking back on that dark, like, when we look back on, movies like The Lion King, we're like, man, how are we not fucked up seeing that as kids?
Why?
It's not one of those, so, yeah. Okay. So okay, fine. I struggle to find something good to say, a lot to say about this movie that's good, but it is worth checking out.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be severely overrated. I can probably guarantee that. But, it's fine. It's not, it's not a movie to get angry at or anything because of this stuff. Because the movie's too likable.
Yeah.
To dislike it for the stuff that I mentioned. So, yeah. That is a recommendation.
Twisted as it may seem. I do have a question for you, though, personally, though. Do you think you would have had a different response to the movie if The Incredibles hasn't come out before it?
I didn't really get any Incredibles vibes from it, though.
No, I'm going with the the animated superhero movie, though. I know it's not the same
Well,
thing at all. I'm just saying this.
I didn't love The Incredibles as much as everybody else did either, so...
It's always going to be the same response regardless.
It's like that whole speech I gave when we reviewed How to Train Your Dragon 2. I'm just having a lot of trouble with animated movies lately.
This is better than some of the other stuff that's been out this year, though.
Well, yeah, obviously.
This year has been terrible for animated movies.
This is still the year of the nut job. So
worst movie of the year so far.
No, there's probably about 5 that are worse than it.
I have to think about it, like, seriously.
We're gonna review a movie in this video that is worse than the nut job.
Oh, I'm curious.
We have to go through one more review to get to it. So let's do that now. I've already turned to it in my notebook, so let's do that now.
Okay.
The less harmful movie is Jimi, Always by My Side, which is the Jimi Hendrix movie starring Andre Benjamin. You probably heard about once. He was on Letterman promoting it recently, which is pretty much the only thing I had heard about it. Maybe I saw a poster on IMDb or something, but now this isn't your standard biopic, and I don't know if that's a compliment or not. There was this thing that's, well, I want to say Scorsese started it with The Aviator, but I'm sure it happened plenty of times before that. But that's always my go-to.
All right.
When the biopics do this. I struggle to call it a biopic because it's not about Jimi Hendrix's life. It's just about one small fraction that took place. Which I really, really loved that The Aviator did. And some other movies after that I'm not remembering off the top of my head. So this is one of those movies. There's no scene of Andre Benjamin drowning in puke or anything like that. There's no scene where it's like, you know, he discovers a guitar for the first time and all that shit. That's all, it's all just one fraction. We don't even get text that says Jimi Hendrix died at, 27 or something. Mm-hmm. The movie just gets to a point and then it just ends. And speaking of the end credits, it's worth noting that the writer and director is John Ridley, the guy that wrote 12 Years a Slave, that co-wrote 12 Years a Slave, as much as he wants to deny that. But he has no director to feud with this time. No David O. Russell, no Steve McQueen. He wrote and directed this himself. I'm waiting for some co-writer to come out of the woodwork and say, by the way, I totally wrote Always by My Side. It was just called Always by My Side. They felt the need to tack Jimi onto it so people knew what it was. But whatever. So there are a few things that make this a not so traditional biopic, besides the whole it's just a fraction of his life thing. They couldn't get the rights to any of Jimi Hendrix's songs. There are a couple, but I think they're like different versions, because I heard Wild Thing in there, but I think it might have been a different version. And then he does perform in the movie, but I don't know if that's like a real song or if it's just like, you know, maybe it was like a cover of some throwaway song or something, I don't know, but there was nothing in this. It's worth it. This was really funny because we got the, what trailer was it? Was it the Minions?
Yeah.
That had, shit, which song do they use of his now? Fuck. Anyway, the Minions trailer has a Jimi Hendrix song in it, and I can't remember which one it is now. I just remember I turned to you and I said, oh my god, I'm hearing more Jimi Hendrix now in this Minions trailer than I did when I watched Always by My Side.
Yeah, I remember
There's something wrong here. That's really bothered me. Which song did they use? Anyway, okay. So, now, here's another thing. The movie begins, and, well, here's the thing. The big problem with this movie is that they don't make Jimi Hendrix an interesting character.
Ooh.
Like, at all. He's very much, he's basically the puppet of Imogen Poots' character. And the movie actually starts with her. And then she's, like, gone for the second half of the movie, because she just doesn't matter anymore. But she kind of somewhat discovers him, I guess. She's playing Keith Richards' then-girlfriend. And she's watching Jimi Hendrix on stage. But we don't know that for a second, because we're mainly focused on her. You would think this was a movie on her, the way this movie starts. And then this really happy guy runs up and says, oh my god, I know you, can I get your autograph? And we know she's really present living in that rock and roll era, because her response to him is, she turns to him and says, why sign an autograph? Wouldn't you rather kiss me? I mean, because that's the closest you're ever going to get to sucking the cocks of the Rolling Stones. Is that not what you really want to do? And then he leaves disappointed. And then she ends up being the one that basically manages him, if that's what you want to call it. But then the second half he meets Haley Atwell, and then that's its own thing, and this whole part kind of goes by the wayside. I don't know. But the main problem here is... Well, actually, there's a few. I'm not a fan of this movie, by the way. John Ridley as a director... I don't think that's going to do it for me if this is what he's going for. Here's the thing. This movie looks really, really messy. I don't know if that was the point or what, but let me explain the way this movie looks. First off, there's a lot of cutting. A lot of weird-ass cutting. Because it's this kind of stuff, okay? It's when I guess you're trying to be flashy because the scene itself is not interesting enough. Which, that kind of should be your concern in the writing phase, and not so much, like, the editing and post-production phase, but, let me tell you how a lot of scenes in this movie play out. Well, for starters, it gets really, really choppy when we get introductions, because it's like a couple of cuts, and then it freezes, and then it says the person's name in text next to them. It's one of those. But when I mean a lot of cutting, it's the cutting, and then it's the audio as well. Because there are a lot of scenes where it's just two people sitting around having a conversation. But he's trying to be flashy, so what happens is they'll be talking, it'll cut to them not talking in the same place while the audio of their conversation is still going. And then it will cut back to them talking, and it's the normal audio again. A lot of scenes look like that, and that is really off-putting and just screams... this scene is not interesting enough by itself. I, as a director, have to try to be all flashy and shit. Not a fan of that. Especially since this movie's like 2 hours long.
Ooh.
This movie didn't need to be 2 hours long. How is it that this movie can be just under 2 hours long and a bit grating, despite just being one portion of his life? And Scorsese can take one portion of Howard Hughes' life and turn it into a 3-hour movie that is a borderline masterpiece.
It's a difference between two director styles right there. Yes.
Granted, Scorsese, and John... I don't know if Ridley's actually directed anything before this or not. I just know his writing credits. He worked a lot on The Fresh Prince. He got in that... fiasco with David O. Russell over Three Kings, and he got in that fiasco with Steve McQueen over 12 Years a Slave. That's all I know about John Ridley. That he's a fucking troublemaker, apparently. So, look, that is the face of a troublemaker. Yeah, he worked on Undercover Brother as well. Apparently Barbershop was a TV series in 2005 and 2006.
Yeah, it was on Showtime, I believe. Weird I know that.
Okay. So, that's what this is. Performances. I think Andre Benjamin has promise as an actor. I really liked Idlewild. Not many people saw that.
Definitely.
That was like the, well, to put it bluntly, Black Moulin Rouge.
That's exactly what it was.
But just, between the writing and the performance just kind of being there, they just made Jimi Hendrix really unengaging and uninteresting. And then, you have the stories with Haley Atwell and Imogen Poots. None of this was talking to me.
Because this could have worked with a competent script and a competent director that actually cared. Because this sounds awesome. Andre Benjamin as Jimi Hendrix, that sounds amazing to me. Seems like a lost opportunity.
Yeah, the movie's just, for me, the movie just wasn't there.
That's a shame.
And, like I said, it really, really simplifies it, but I guess I've kind of gone through my thoughts enough now to where I can say this with validity. It's just boring. Really. So, yeah. That's a bummer.
Serious letdown.
Okay. Well, it's about to look pretty good in comparison. Because our last movie is I have now watched 2 shitty movies in the past 2 years called Extraterrestrial. The first one was this indie, really, really cheap indie sci-fi thing that was played up as a comedy. This is like a horror movie. For starters, the directors are some guys that call themselves the Vicious Brothers. So, you know, it's like those guys, I can't remember their names now, the guys that made Undead. That wasn't them, was it? No, it wasn't.
No, they did Grave Encounters.
Okay.
That's a very popular indie, like, horror movie.
Okay. Well, if you liked that, this is their next album. So, here's the thing. That's going to bug me now. Who are the guys that did Undead? What are their names?
We'll find out.
So, here's the thing. Naturally, you know what it's about because of the title. The opening is a guy that works at like a convenience store. And outside in the rain, this girl is running around screaming for help. And, oh yes, that's it. Okay. I confused the two.
The Sparrow Brothers.
Okay, so, this girl is running around aimlessly. She seems very, very troubled and like she's been through some shit. And she's screaming for help. And she finds a phone booth and she gets in there to try to call for help. But then we just kind of see a bright light in here. And then, the phone booth is entirely gone when the guy comes out to investigate. And then the phone booth drops back to the ground completely empty. So, we know what we're dealing with, given that and the title. Well, then it turns into, I don't know what the fuck. Okay. Well, we meet our people. There are like 4 people, I think. They are so unimportant, I wasn't even able to keep track of how many there were. I think there were 4 of them. You have our main girl character. You have her boyfriend that wants to propose to her. And you have the 2 friends he invited, which are the douche and the blonde. The dumb blonde.
The tits?
Yeah.
To continue the D words.
So, they're driving out, and once they get into town, they get stopped. And the cop tells them that there's been some, strange goings-on around here. There's animals being killed. There's vandalism. You're not up to any trouble now, are you? And they talk him out of going away. Well, as you probably guessed, this is where the movie really confuses me. Just last week, I went on this whole thing with the Town That Dreaded Sundown about tone. Okay. Okay. What's happening here is you have your very cliche characters, as I mentioned. Guess where they're on their way to? It's in the description.
Oh, Cabin in the Woods, of course.
Yes, they're going to a cabin in the woods. And when they get there, the first thing they do is party. There's a whole montage of beer cans opening and just partying. Movie partying. You can see the exact image in your head when I say that. So my first thought was, oh great, this is trying to be Cabin in the Woods as far as satire for movies on cabins in the woods. This was already fucking done about as well as it possibly could be with Cabin in the Woods. What is the point of this?
Yeah.
Well, this is when I continued to get lost. Because I thought they were going for satire. But in actuality, I think the movie's just a piece of shit. Because they even even the blonde girl felt like a satire, because when we see her, she has this whole monologue that's in teenager speak.
Okay.
Like in text speak. Like TTYL, she actually says.
Oh, wow.
And she's doing the whole dumb blonde thing. You can understand where I was like, okay, this is clearly trying to be satirical, right?
Yeah.
If they were going for satire with the characters in the Cabin in the Woods setting, all satire ends there. And the rest of it is a full-on horror movie. please tell me you understand where my confusion's coming from.
Yeah, that's really weird.
Okay. And we get our, backwoods, character actor doing the warning thing. It's Michael Ironside, who has much better things to be doing, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And just to be funny, they put him in a shirt that's just a picture of a rubber duck. In a better movie, that image would have probably been more amusing. But by then, the movie had already completely lost me. He's the war veteran who's, let's shoot shit up and stuff like that. Well, and he's, secluded and all that. He's John Malkovich at the beginning of Red. As much as I hate that movie, that's the first thing that came to mind to reference.
Okay.
And, you have your bullshit character development. Like, you have, there's the big thing. They make it this big emotional thing where the guy wants to propose to the girl and, she says no, and, their relationship's on the rocks, but, they've got to band together anyway and find their love again in this harrowing situation that started with satire. It's basically trying to be... Listen to this. It's basically a full-on horror version of The Watch. That's what it came off as.
That's interesting.
Not really, when you see it play out. But yeah, it's a real full-on horror movie. They do the jump scares. They do a dog gets gutted for shock value. It starts to get gruesome and all that, or as gruesome as they could afford. But it just doesn't work at all. And then the tone thing came back because there was a death scene in this movie that I was laughing at. But the whole problem is that I had no idea if I was supposed to be laughing or not.
Uh-oh.
Because I started to laugh because it was funny to me, but then like halfway through it I was like, wait a minute. This is supposed to be serious, I think. And I just had no idea how I was supposed to react. But I went with my gut and went ahead and laughed at the thought of it trying to be serious. So, this just... What in the fuck? I mean, I get... With the guy... Okay, they call themselves the Vicious Brothers. Something tells me they thought they were being fucking clever in some way.
Let's look at these guys again.
I'm sure whatever was going on here they thought was clever. But...
Emil Hirsch and Casey Affleck have jobs.
Just help me figure out what it is. Now, actually, I don't want to know. And, of course, and it's trying, do its badass thing a little bit. There's a moment where Michael Ironside's getting ready to investigate a strange noise, and he, pumps his gun and says, "Come and piece my ass." Stuff like that.
Oh.
Now, the thing that made me really, really hate this movie, like, I was just sitting there naturally saying, well, what a surprise, this movie fucking sucks. It's a piece of shit. But the thing that drove me to hate this movie was the very last scene. Number one, once again, they think they're being clever, but kind of somewhat spoilery. It's basically the end of Cabin Fever. But they think they're being original and shocking with it. A lot of movies have done it since. Let's say Night of the Living Dead. That's what started it. And then, Cabin Fever brought it back. And a lot of movies that, want a shock ending try to do it. So, good job of being all original there. But no. There's a scene at the very end of the movie when that scene happens. And it's really, 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 really serious. Like, I think they actually wanted you to cry during it. Once again, I'm not totally sure, because what this movie is trying to do as far as tone, I had no idea what was when and where. So, this just... no. I'd like to think that tone is the first thing you establish going into a movie.
Yeah.
But when you can't even accomplish that, when you're in the phase of this movie's in theaters now. Oh God, I don't know. But this just, no, this is just fucking dumb. This, I don't know. It just shows once again that pretty much anybody can get a movie made now. And quality just doesn't matter anymore, especially in this poor horror genre. What the horror genre has become is such a sad state of affairs. Especially this year. There's been like, what, 2? Where it's like, yeah, that was good for this genre.
Horror movies this year?
Mm.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just throw that onto the pile. This is probably worse than the other Extraterrestrial one. I bashed that movie as much as I can. At least it wasn't. At least it had its tone down. For God's sake.
Mm.
But at least it was funny on purpose. I didn't laugh at it, but at least it was trying to be funny with the purpose of being a comedy. Just, no, I don't know what the fuck these guys are doing, and I don't care. Alright, we did this in under an hour, great.
Okay, last shot here. Interstellar?
Yeah, of course. I mean, people are gonna see it anyway, so I don't need to say that, but, you know, yeah.
And my mouth was dropped like several times during watching the movie, and you can hear a pin drop a lot of the times too. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, I didn't really go into the sound, but yeah, that was a highlight as well.
Insane. Big Hero 6?
I guess so. Yeah, I think people will enjoy it more so than I did, so.
So it's another Frozen for you this year? It's Frozen this year for you. And it's also going to the parks now, so it makes sense.
Of course it is.
Jimmy, all is by my side?
No.
Extraterrestrial.
Please don't encourage them.
So next week, we've got Dumb and Dumber 2. We've got Kirk Cameron Saving Christmas. We've got Laggies. And we've got Dear White People. Mm-hmm. And it sounds to me like we've got, was it Elsa and Fred?
No.
That's not what it's called?
No, there's that horror movie,
Jezebel, yeah.
And then there's A Merry Freaking Christmas, which was one of Robin Williams' last completed movies.
Oh yeah, that I thought that was something that had to be watched.
Yes. That's
coming, so tomorrow, Halloween Horror Nights final video for Halloween Horror Nights 24. Sunday, brand new verses, and watch the rest of the videos here on Pop this week. And AJ, any parting words?